All right, mic check, mic check. What's going on to all of the beautiful people out there? Welcome to another edition of the Conscious Approach channel on YouTube. My name is JV Wins, joined as always by Dogon SS on this wonderful uh, February the 14th, Valentine's Day. For all of those people out there who get into the Valentine's Day stuff, man, hope you enjoy the large crowds and spending all your money
Ah,
because it
yeah.
is it is definitely more trouble to do it than it is to not do it. I mean, it's more trouble to not do it than to try and what it is to fall in and conform and do it. So go ahead and do it, fall in line, because your day and your life is easier if you do it. And I'm talking primarily to the men out there. Um, but got a few interesting topics to touch on this week on the channel. Appreciate everybody for tuning in. Appreciate everybody for supporting our brand of logical content. As I
Sure.
always like, as I always like to say, we are on a race to 1,000 subscribers. We are just below the 200 sub mark. So pretty exciting stuff. We certainly appreciate everybody for following along with us. But if you happen to catch this video and you are not subscribed to the channel, please do so. If you don't mind, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Start getting these views, start getting these likes up, man. Leave a comment, let us know what you think about any particular topic on any particular video. We do pay attention to comments as long as they are not of the troll variety. Although we do let the troll comments stay there, we just don't respond to them at all. We don't interact to them very much. But yeah. So always like to get that little disclaimer out there. Go ahead and join the tribe, man, because we are forward, onward, and moving as we continue to crank out this content. Every other day and every other week. So with that being said, we're gonna go ahead and get right into it. First up, we're gonna talk about Stephen A. Smith, but this is not going to be a Stephen A. Smith content. Uh, this is not going to be a Stephen A. Smith um, topic within the realm of sports. This is going to be a Stephen A. Smith topic within the realm of life. So recently, so Stephen A. Smith, for anyone who does not know, is kind of on this press tour. He put out a book in January. It's his memoir, and apparently it's
Oh,
doing really well. It's probably, I think it's already on the bestsellers list and all of that kind of stuff. So people are buying it up. People are really into buying celebrity memoirs, I guess. Um, and the name of the book is like something something. Um, a story about second chances and first takes or something like that. So the title of the book is a play on the show that he's on ESPN, First Take. And so he's doing a lot of podcasts and TV shows, and he's doing a lot of press to promote the book, and he's doing all of these in-person appearances and whatnot. And so recently, Stephen A. Smith was on the podcast. What's the name of this show? Andrew Schultz's Flagrant with Akaash Singh. I hope I'm saying the second guy's name correctly. Andrew Schultz is a comedian, but he also does the podcasting. He used to do the show The Brilliant Idiots with Charlemagne, and he now does this show, Flagrant. Andrew Schultz's Flagrant with this guy, Akaash Singh. I think that's how you say his name. And Stephen A. Smith was a guest on that show talking about, one of the things that they touched on during the show was Stephen A. Smith talking about why he never got married, or why to this day he remains someone who's never been married. And Stephen A. Smith is like 53, 54 years old, something like that. So this was some interesting stuff. Stephen A. Smith talking about why he's never been married, or why he never got married, or why he continues to remain unmarried. So this is a good quick little snippet from that show that we will go ahead and expound upon once we play this. So I'll go ahead and play it now.
Stephen A.
Yeah, Stephen A. on marriage. And relationships get broached to Stephen A. Smith often because I guess people just can't seem to wrap their brains around a guy who is successful as he is and as old as he is and has never been married. People think that that's odd, even though it's not. Um, but it is what it is. So he's often probed with questions as to his relationship status. But to his credit, he's never been shy about answering some of those questions, as long as it doesn't, break the fourth wall and get too inappropriate. So With that being said, we'll go ahead and play what Stephen A. Smith had to say real quick, and then we'll talk about it.
I went to a journalism conference. And I watched, listen to me, listen, a journalism conference. And I watched two people who I knew were married go into their room together. Came out of the room, went downstairs to meet their respective spouses who had just arrived.
Hey, maybe they were journalism.
I'm just saying, it's like, it doesn't matter, y'all. It doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman, anything's possible. It doesn't matter what industry you in. It doesn't matter what's going on. And when you are a journalist / commentator, pundit, whatever, you connected to the fourth estate, which is the media and stuff like that, you see it all. You see it all. And I can't even begin to tell you the things that I've seen. It makes you scared to get married. Makes you scared to get married.
I mean,
Well,
we're
you sound
already
us a little
married.
late, bro.
Yeah. We're crazy.
Listen, it happens everywhere. Y'all talking to me because I do sports, but the fact of the matter is sports, Wall Street, you could be in medicine, somebody, the doctors and nurses working in the hospital. Look, man, since Adam and Eve, this been going on. Stop acting like we don't know.
Wow, Stephen A.
Right. So don't act like we don't know.
Wow.
So basically, Stephen A. Smith was primarily speaking on apprehensiveness with respect to getting married based upon people's propensity to step out on the marriage. They may have gone more in depth with that particular subject matter in other areas, but for the purposes of what we are talking about here, that's pretty much what Stephen A. Smith was talking about. You can correct me if you had a different interpretation, but it seems as though that particular part of it was him somewhat harking on people not wanting to stay faithful within the confines of the relationship, or people just having a greater propensity, likelihood for doing these sorts of things. And so anyone, much less a man, would want to stay away from getting involved in something like that, in order to stave off having that happen to him. But what was your initial interpretation of what Stephen A. had to say about being, scared of getting married?
I would say that it's all factual. I agree with 100% of that. Right now, the sexual liberation of people, it's exceeding that of, the sexual revolution and the hipsters and stuff. Now, granted, they were having free sex, more or less in the streets, from what I understand. And, but at the same time, I really don't see what's different right now. So are there big ass sex festivals? No, but people's sexual appetites, people's sexual urges are out of control. They're rampant, and people can't keep it in the pants, male or female. Nobody can at this point. And so when people put such a large emphasis on infidelity, irreconcilable differences, when when these things arise, then, which is inevitable because nobody can keep it in the pants, then there's divorce. And then, so what are we really doing this for? Because if you ask, the majority of people what their deal breaker is in a relationship, 9 times out of 9, all right, the first thing that's going to come out of their mouth is infidelity. I don't deal with cheaters. So if you don't want to deal with a cheater, if you don't want to deal with infidelity and stuff like that, then you're really trimming down the amount of people in the world that are willing to do that, at least in the Western world. You're really trimming down your odds right there. Now, I'm not saying accept the cheater. I think what really needs to go on right now is, in mass, since everybody's just doing this, there needs to be a restructuring because honestly, I feel like this boat is too far gone to get back to traditionalism. I think what needs to happen now is that people need to reconsider what cheating is. And is it sex with another person? Is it all this other stuff? Because everybody's just having sex with everybody at this point. At least the people that are having sex. They're just having sex with everybody's just having sex. So getting married in this market and you are going to break up with your woman for cheating, or she's going to break up with you for cheating. It sounds like a setup, and especially if you're somebody of the caliber of Stephen A. Smith, who everybody knows his name, and his bankroll goes farther than the average man. He's gonna have fun with his life. So I don't see why a man in his position would get married or see the need to. So yeah, I agree with him wholeheartedly here, and I think the main baseline reason is people are too animalistic with their sexual desires. They can't keep it in their pants, and infidelity is bound to happen at some point. How about you, sir? Do you agree with Mr. Stephen A. On this one?
Yeah, I agree with him, and it's unfortunate. Like our society is weird. I find myself more and more mystified by it each day. We talk about how much of a struggle, and not we, I mean people in general, talk about how much of a struggle modern relationships are because we approach it from the mindset of traditionalism, but from our behaviors and our actions, we approach it from a modern standpoint. And so those two things clash. You can't think of it traditionally, but still want to live in it from a modern sense. Like those two things kind of don't make sense. And I do agree with you. I think we're looking at a situation in which we're going to have to make a choice here. We're either going to have to stop being lazy, or we're going to have to reassess what certain things such as infidelity and cheating actually mean and how consequential and damaging these things actually are. Like we're going to have to make a choice. Right now we're trying to have it both ways though. Right now what we're trying to do is say, you know, sex everywhere, everybody's getting it in, everybody's doing their thing, but oh, we're married, so you can't cheat on me and I won't cheat on you. Like we're trying to have a big too. That doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't make sense. And I feel like, you know, character is something that either exacerbates bad traits in a person or does the up or sort of enhances positive traits. And what I'm finding more and more nowadays is people are generally lazy because things just sort of come to them with ease and they don't have to work for them anymore. You've mentioned in the past how one of the issues with marriage in particular is people kind of romanticize about the idea of marriage as if it's this perpetual fantasy that is just constant happiness and requires no work or effort, when in reality it's the exact opposite. Once you have the wedding and once you get past the honeymoon and you start going through the daily rigors of a marriage, especially when kids get involved and you're raising an entire family and running a household, there's less constant happiness and there's more work to go around. It's a job. It's a work that it's a job that needs to be executed on a high level in order for it to be, handled successfully. And what I think is one of the issues today is people are just more and more inherently lazy because, you don't have to work for attention. You can just crack open your phone and get that on social media. You don't have to work to exercise any of your sexual appetites because you can subscribe to OnlyFans or you can flip onto a streaming site somewhere. People generally speaking, man or woman, don't have to work. We become lazy, extremely soft. And when you become lazy, and you're unwilling to work at something, then of course, when you get into relationships, if you're unwilling to work at that, they're going to fall apart on you. Now, you can't be a person who's lazy and unwilling to work, but then say that your relationship fell apart because of your spouse cheating on you. I kind of feel like you're trying to have it both ways. So, like I said before, we're going to have to make a choice. Either we embrace hard work a little more as a society, or we kind of step back and reevaluate how offensive things like extramarital sex actually is. Because, like you said, people are having sex all over the place. Nobody is caring. You got polyamorous relationships sprouting up all over the place. Um, People who just cheat on their husband and wives, like Stephen A. Smith talked about. Like, this stuff is running rampant. So how big a deal is cheating actually? And I'm not saying that because I'm trying to excuse it or minimize it. I'm legitimately asking a question. Because if you're unwilling to be us, if you're someone who's going to be lazy and unwilling to work, and you approach your relationship or your marriage, and you're unwilling to work at it, so as to um, instill within your partner or significant other that cheating would be ill-advised because of what they're letting go, because of how hard you're willing to work at it, then you're increasing the likelihood that some of these calamities are going to befall you. So, you know, I don't know too much about Stephen A. Smith on a personal level like that. Maybe he looks at it as, I'm unwilling to work at this stuff, or maybe he's sort of apathetic and feels like he'll be hard pressed to find a woman who's willing to work at it as hard as he will. And so if I'm unwilling to find a woman who's willing to work at it as hard as me, I'm going to cut my losses and stay single so as to avoid dealing with messes like that. Especially when you bring economics into it as well, because he has a lot to lose given his tax bracket. Um, um, in the absence of things that protect him, like prenups and all of that good stuff, of course. So, yeah, the crux of this for me is us making a choice. Right now, we're in this weird limbo. We're in relationship purgatory as a race of humans, where we still think about marriage and relationships traditionally. We romanticize it in that way, but in the modern day application of it, no one's really approaching it like that. At least the people who aren't willing to work hard, the non-hard workers, which I think are the population that is growing, and the population who is not hard workers is, reducing. It's getting smaller. So as people become lazier, and as people continue to care less about working at things, we still think that we're supposed to get into these relationships and get all of these things handed to us, like faithful partners who aren't going to have extramarital, sex and all of that kind of stuff. And if you're lazy and you don't want to work to make sure that not make sure, but if you're lazy and you don't want to work to maximize the chances that that won't happen to you, even though there's always a sliver of a chance that it will, even if you're the hardest worker in the world, then we need to rethink what all of this stuff even means and what we can and cannot tolerate when it comes to what these people do when we get into these contracts with them. And marriage is indeed a contract. Or you can follow the Stephen A. Smith route and say it's not for me and just, do the lifelong single person thing. I think more people are going that route. And given what your personal situation is, and if you know yourself, that might be the best choice for you to make. But I certainly don't think he's out of bounds with what he's saying.
Oh, and yeah, I agree with everything you said, man. And when it comes to situations like the one that Stephen A. explained, people, and this is what I mean by people being so hot in the damn pants. You got to understand who you're dealing with when you're doing your eval. Now, if you don't want a woman that's going to have sex with the Amazon man or the DoorDash guy, while you're out there, grinding it out, and she's a stay-at-home wife, but she has to have sex with somebody because she's bored. So how do you know what's going on there? And I think the big component is you really have to be mindful of somebody that wants to know you for you, like you for you, but not like the things you have and the things you have going on. Now, if they like the things that you have and the things that you have going on, then they like what people have and what people have going on. And that can forever change. But if they like you for your principles, your qualities, and all that other good jazz, then at that point, it's not so easy to get in her gates, sexually. But the people that are so always seeking to be turned on, and this stems into a conversation we had before, where I was saying that people say, "Oh, men always think about sex," and women always think, but women always think about sex as well. But yeah, everybody knows that. But it's just how do we think about sex? And men, when we see a woman walking down the street or whatever, and something's jiggling the right way, we'll look at him like, yeah, goddamn, I wonder what that would be like for men, whoop de whoop, yada yada yada. We're not trying to have a life with this person. We're not trying to upgrade with this person. We just say, hey, that's a nice little jiggle there, but I'm happy with the stuff at home. The difference between a woman when she's attracted to a man is that she's attracted to what he's got going on better, in a sense of a lifestyle, how this guy could probably take care of me. And so, better than this guy, or this guy's he's got a better car or whatever. It's a different type of thing. And you say, well, that's not sex. Well, it is. It's a form of, it's not like actual intercourse. It's like what turns them on. And if you talk to a woman and whatever, she's going to tell you that she has to be turned on by the guy in order to be in the mood to always be having sex with him. Well, what will make her always want to be turned on? She's constantly got a turned on meter. And so at that point, she's always thinking about sex. So if you got somebody that's always wanting to be turned on, that's a dangerous person. If in a relationship when you don't want to deal with infidelities. So, well, how do you eval against that? Is that you get somebody that's not interested in these things, that's not always trying to be turned on and not always seeking dopamine rushes. And so if they're always seeking a dopamine rush, then at that point, when things get boring, regular, y'all always see each other, y'all always wake up in the same bed. That's too mundane for her. So how do you know when you're dealing with a chick that's going to get bored versus one that's content and trying to build something? I think it's really based on their worldviews and how they view you. And for somebody like Stephen A. Smith, who's already on, who's big and everybody knows his name, his trust filter, I would say is he is skeptical. You see his hairline. No woman really wants to talk to him, but he's Stephen A. Smith on ESPN's. So he's going to get attention. So I'm pretty sure he's pretty skeptical of the women that really are around trying to shoot shots and all that other stuff. So his best bet is to just keep it all at bay, not let it get too close to him for the lifestyle he lives. But for the average, everyday, regular man who's not in the Stephen A. Smith boat, who wants to be in a committed situation for real with something, you're going to be hard pressed to find something truly traditional. But there are women on the traditional spectrum, and they ain't giving it out to everybody. And that just goes in touch with the eval, man. You got to see what turns her on. And if what turns her on are things and lifestyles, then she's going to want a better thing and lifestyle than the one you can provide. So just a mindful thing there. But honestly, I agree with this. I've seen it. I've lived both sides of the fence.
Yeah.
Raised
so
to be,
have I.
Yeah, raised to be good man, well mannered. And I saw that one get me no play. So I went into the bat cave and came out, bro, just getting wild with it, at least for my life and my standards. And I'm just out here just doing things. And while I'm out there seeing this stuff, I'm really realizing that, hey, man, these people that put up a front, the other people, I know what they got going on behind closed doors. And it's the most unassuming people. So yeah, from Stephen A saying that he's seen it all, because I'm sure he's got access to people in Hollywood and he's been to all kinds of parties and rigmaroles. So he's seen it all. So like he said, so why trust it? So yeah, definitely conversation I'd like to have another time when we're dealing with infidelity. I'm sure somehow, some way it'll pop up again. But yeah, it does need to be reevaluated for the average person right now, because right now sex is out of control, and I think there needs to be a restructuring how society handles relationships, so that way we can cultivate family structures in the midst of these single situations. You know what I'm saying? So if things are restructured culturally that way, because we're already off a fucking cliff, so it's best to just build anew. And I think a new way would be to stop putting so much emphasis on cheating. So I don't have all the solutions, but hey, it's just a thought, something to consider.
Well, I mean, it has to be looked at, because I don't have statistics right in front of me. So let me not speak on this as if I know for a fact. But I would imagine that a good percentage of all divorces are cited by irreconcilable differences, which oftentimes that irreconcilable difference is somebody cheated on somebody and the other person can't reconcile it. And
Right.
so that's when they go through with the divorce, because you just can't get over it. Like, some marriages can survive it. The person who was aggrieved learns how to get over it and move on. And they, work on it and patch it up and whatnot. But I think for the most part, there's a zero tolerance policy still when it comes to sexual infidelity. But it's weird because everybody, like you said, like, sex is so rampant. It's hard for us to continue to look at sexual infidelity along the traditional sense. Now, some people who approach life that way, still, all the power to you. Like, if you've been in a situation, if you're a traditional minded person and you went through the process of vetting your potential partner and they passed all of your, tests, and y'all end up getting married and there's some cheating that went down anyway, then you got to do what you got to do. It is what it is. But
Yeah, man.
I get the sense that the vast majority of these marriages that end along these lines involve people who approach their marriage with the same loosey-goosey attitude towards sex, but still have this zero tolerance rule towards infidelity. And those two,
Exactly.
that to me is a counterintuitive notion that we're gonna have to try and reevaluate what all of that means. So it is what it is. But the last thing that I'll say is, yeah, men and women do look at these things differently. Like, I think first of all, it's becoming harder and harder to find people in general, but women specifically, who are more traditional minded. There's just less of them to go around, because there's less of them being raised along those lines, and how much of them who are raised along those lines are able to make it to a point where they can think for themselves as an adult and they didn't get corrupted by a lot of modern ideologies. So it's just getting harder and harder to find that, which is what makes the idea of just staying single for life, single from the standpoint that you're not officially married, something that kind of makes more sense and is more of a reasonable option to consider, because women act on what excites their emotions. That's what I like to call it. Like you brought up, like the turn on factor.
Right.
And I look at, and the way that I look at the turn on factor is women are triggered into action, especially with respect to men, based upon how excited their emotions become. And those emotions can be excited by a litany of things. It can be, a guy's his mannerisms. It can be his stuff. It can be different things that just excite a woman's emotions. It can be something as simple as if a woman likes tattoos and you're a guy with a bunch of tattoos and those excited her emotions, and the guy she's with doesn't have tattoos. It can be anything, from something small to something big. And so whenever you're dealing with someone who doesn't know how to keep themselves, who does not know how to adequately control their behavior when their emotions become excited, you run the risk of being violated by this person.
Exactly.
So the vetting is a real thing that you got to look at. But at a certain point, this is Adam and Eve stuff. And this Adam and Eve stuff is being confused by modern ideology when it comes to how we look at sex juxtaposed to how we look at traditional relationships. And something's going to have to give.
Yeah, agree 100. And I'll say that my last point, for women. So for women, they having a lower body count in situations like this makes sense, because women's orgasms, if I'm not mistaken, I forgot what it was called, whatever chemical thing that goes off, but it's similar to heroin or something like that. And, when they actually have orgasms. And so for women out there who get that high from having orgasms from whatever, the lifestyle, they always got to get that friction going on down there. When she's in a situation and she's been getting the same friction for 5 years, but she knows that there's varieties out there, and she's going based off emotions, what spark it and got it, all this other stuff, it's a recipe for disaster. So lower body counts, you genuinely lower body counts, not low body counts because of female incelisms, but actual genuine low body counts because that's not how they feel about giving a body out. Then that trend should carry on when they have to not have sex with anybody else but one person. But if they're used to hopping from D to D, what's stopping them now when they get married? The flip side of that, a woman's going to say, well, so you're saying it's okay if a man cheat? Hey, I'm not the one who made the rules on this planet. I didn't make these rules. Men don't like women who have other men. Period. Women like men who have other women.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't make those rules, and y'all vouch for that. So if y'all like a man because he can get vagina, and you're turned off by a man because you can clearly tell that he doesn't, so that's why all the women are having sex with the same men and having babies by the same men. Well, I didn't make those rules. And who made up those statistics? It's happening. When women have choices, these numbers are happening. So I'm not making this up. This is what nature is choosing. So, hey, if I'm in a situation with a woman and she finds me attractive and she likes me, she's going to be less turned off if I go out in the streets with her or whatever, and women in the sexual marketplace do not find me attractive. She would be turned off by me at that point. She wants to know that her man can get other women. I don't know what that is. I'm not a woman. So since we're opposites, that's the thing. So you can't sit there and go apples to apples. It's not. Men are apples. All right. Women are apples, because they're fruit. And men are vegetables, man. They're a little tart and disgusting at times. But that's fine. But we're opposites. So, yeah, man, just really needs to be reevaluated. People need to look at these dynamics when dealing with masculinity and femininity differently. And I think that, enough people, with mature mindsets, I think that we can get at least some group of people to actually have sound and stable relationships, because I still think it's functional and possible to have functional relationships. So Man.
I hold out a slimmer of hope, but it's getting rougher rather.
Hey, man, it's
I
crazy.
think I've said before that one of the greatest tricks the devil ever pulled was convincing the world that men and women were the same, and we're not the same. And so these things like, these female rappers who rap about their body counts and they're proud of it, who rap about dating in a masculine way, who talk about how cool it is or how much they're validated by having all of these other dudes on speed dial. This kind of stuff that's permeated down into the masses and has people in regular society acting out this stuff. That's a byproduct of this modern trend that's been going on now for, I would say, the last 5 to 10 years, which is trying to convince everyone that men and women are the same and that sexual neutrality is a thing that exists when it doesn't. It never has. Like, we don't operate by the same rules. Men and women are not the same. And now I am not saying that one is better or superior to the other. I'm literally saying they're not the same. They're inequitable. We're not the same. So people need to get off this stuff thinking that we're the same, and we take these mentalities into relationships and then it all blows up. Because I think at our core, we still understand that there are certain things about all of this that's kind of all the way wrong, even though socially we've accepted it. So we get into these relationship situations and these marriage situations carrying all of this negative psychosis, and we end up feeling violated because there's something inherent in that act that made us feel some type of way about that. So yeah, we can sit around talking about how it's all about smashing this and smashing that on both sides, high body counts, all of this kind of stuff, and what I got going on with this or that. But when you get cheated on, there's something that's speaking to you that's like, there's something that feels wrong about this. So like I said, there's a choice that's going to have to be made. Either we understand the work that goes into, having these things not happen to us, or we just reevaluate what cheating even is. What is sex? How seriously do we look at things like sex outside of a relationship? Like, how much attention do we continue to pay to this? Because we're double talking it right now. We're having it both ways. And I think Stephen A. Smith just escapes the shrapnel by just staying perpetually single. And that's his decision to make. It is what it is. At the end of the day, all the man wants is peace anyway.
Yeah, now that is shrapnel.
Yeah. And that's one of his words that he likes to use a lot. Shrapnel of criticism. Stephen A. Smith loves saying that. Shrapnel of criticism.
Yeah, man. Reevaluate.
Good luck, Stephen A. Man. Don't let him knock you off your square, man. You stay single, man. You can afford it, that's for sure. You ain't tripping. So